And we'll stand for pledge of allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ladies, Miller,
Here.
McGrath here, Heller, Sullivan.
Here. Okay, this is a public hearing. The purpose of the public hearing is regarding an application for waiver of the administrative cost cap for the 2012-2013 school year. The notices for the public hearing were published in the following papers: Des Plaines Journal, Niles Journal, Park Ridge Journal, Prospect Heights Journal, Mount Prospect Journal, Rosemont Journal, Northwest Journal, Elk Grove Journal and Topics, Arlington Heights Journal, Suburban Journal, Elk Grove Journal, Rolling Meadows Journal, Palatine Journal and Topics, Wheeling Journal and Topics, Wheeling Journal, and the Gulf Journal. Mary, can you start discussion on the waiver?
Sure. Section 105 of the Illinois School Code 517 1.5 requires that certain functions within the school district defined as administrative expenditures have a limit of 5% when you look at actual budget. Well, with the dissolution of METSEP, the district was paying administrative costs for special education to METSEP. That was coded as a tuition line item. Now that we have our own director and assistant director, those are coded as administrative expenditures that fall under this cost cap. As a result, we are exceeding the cap by 1% because these factors are beyond the control of the school district, meaning that the functions the state must have us report under are determined by us. We are seeking a waiver for 1 year of the administrative cost. We have notified all of the legislators that serve District 207 as well as our collective bargaining unit and advised them that we were holding this public hearing and seeking this waiver.
Any questions or comments from the board? Any questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, is there a motion to adjourn the public hearing?
So moved. Second.
Burke, Heller? Any questions or comments on the motion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting is adjourned at 7:03. Now we're going to the regular meeting of the Board of Education, District 207, and we will call the meeting to order. And since we've already done the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll go straight to the roll call.
McGrath here, Miller,
Here.
Lays, Burke,
Here.
Heller, Sullivan.
Here. Okay, and as we start every meeting, we start with 207's best. Maine East.
Good evening. On behalf of the faculty and staff of Maine East High School, I'm proud to recognize Kevin Gao, our candidate for District 207's Best of the Month for November Community Service. Keep standing. I'll stand with you, so it won't be so bad. Kevin is a familiar face at Maine East, particularly to the faculty and staff. And the reason for this is that Kevin's involved in everything. Not only is he involved in a lot of community service, but he's also very much involved in technology. So he helps out students and staff. His teachers have nothing but wonderful things to say for him. One in particular I want to read to you that his English teacher, Kathy Prey, said about him. And she sums up what a lot of us feel about Kevin and his contributions at Maine East. She says, I hope we can clone Kevin before he leaves us. Kevin doesn't just contribute to the community by signing up for community programs. He also contributes to the community on a daily basis with his cheerful attitude and willingness to help. Cheerful is a bit of an understatement. Talk to Kevin and his enthusiasm is evident in his voice, in his face, and in his body language. This is about as calm as you'll ever see Kevin. Kevin is usually just bubbling with energy. He is energized by his own ideas and the ideas of others. One of the joys in knowing Kevin is receiving his weekly newsletter, full of inspiring quotes from great people in every discipline, in the past and the present. He subscribes to a positive philosophy of life and he shares his positive attitude in his thoughtful newsletter. Even his Facebook page is dedicated to inspiring people to be passionate about life and compassionate with each other. Another of Kevin's great assets is his computer wizardry. He has worked to stay current on Maine East High School technology throughout his 4 years here, and he has been a great asset to his peers and his teachers. We are all enriched by our association with Kevin. So I know for myself and for Dr. Presser, who couldn't be here tonight, and on behalf of all the faculty and staff of Maine East, I am pleased to offer congratulations to Kevin. His spirit of service is a source of pride for him, his family, and for all of us at Maine East. Congratulations, Kevin. Introduce your family that's here with you tonight.
This is my sister Karina, my other sister Caitlin, my mom and
Fantastic. I know you've asked a lot of staff members to be here also.
Mr. Shabanic, he's my swim teacher and department chair, and then my math teacher, Mr. Seek.
Fantastic. And what do you plan to do next year? What are you doing next year after you graduate?
Next year I plan to go to Paul University.
Fantastic. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Sean?
I'm proud to present Leslie Grove as Maine South's 207 Best for Community Service. As with all of our students tonight, there'll probably be a long litany of things that they're involved in. But Leslie is truly multi-talented. She's a cellist. She helps out with our Space Exploration Club. She's written articles for Southwards and Reaching. She was the chair of our homecoming assembly. She's the treasurer of the Maine South Skating Club, and also in her spare time, and anyone who has ever had a child or knows someone involved in ice skating knows how much time and energy that takes. And Leslie's been skating competitively, well, skating since 5 and competitively since 10. So in addition to that, in the community, some of the things we're very proud of Leslie that she's engaged in. Camp counselor for Vacation Bible School. She's also a camp counselor at Misericordia for special needs children. She's performed concerts there for special needs adults. And she's actually on their junior board of directors. She's also been a volunteer intern at the elementary schools. And she's also led a writing workshop at the Parkridge Public Library and is on their teen advisory board. So not only does she volunteer her time, she also gets out there and has input into how these community programs can be better and better serve the community. In asking Leslie's teachers a little bit about her, I'm going to share something that Mr. Degger wrote, who happens to be here tonight. Leslie Grove is a true example of that adage, still waters run deep. I've had the pleasure to teach her both as a freshman in Accelerated World Cultures and again as a senior AP Psychology. It's clear that in her time away from my classroom, she's demonstrated a continuation and refinement of the self-reliance that she's exhibited in her freshman year. Her work so far has been solid, consistent, and of high quality. One thing has not changed about her laid-back, observant, demure style within the classroom community. She continues, however, to demonstrate the fact that even the most unheralded and understated students that you meet, in them lies a depth of humanity that can often go unseen, especially when it's wrapped in the unassuming humility and genuine goodness of a Leslie Grove. She's truly a diamond in the rough. I think that's the sentiment that's run through many of the teachers I spoke with about Leslie, that she is really truly a servant leader. She does it quietly and not for any of the recognition, although we're going to recognize you tonight because we're proud of you, but does it because it's the right thing to do. So with that, I give you Leslie Grove. Leslie, can you let us know who's with you tonight?
My mom.
Thank you for coming. And also, what are your plans for next year?
I think I might be in nursing.
Thank you. You know where you're going?
Not yet.
Still early.
Got a small certificate for you. Congratulations on everything. Keep up with your work.
Google and see what that is.
Audrey.
It is my pleasure to introduce you Sandra Gonzalez. This is our nominee for 207's Best for Community Service for Maine West. You'd be really hard pressed to find anybody at Maine West who doesn't like Sandra and doesn't know about Sandra's awesome volunteer work. But I did find someone who is not very happy to know you, and that would be my daughter, Alex. Because this weekend she was working on she's a junior in college. She's working on her resume, and she had this list, and I said, well, where's your community service? Put your stuff on here. She had 1 or 2 things on there, so I happened to have my 207's Best list at home. So I pulled it out, and I said, this is what your resume should look like. And I rattled off all of the things that Sandra Gonzalez does at Maine West. 4.45 GPA, along with a million different volunteer experiences, and has the toughest classes you can even think of at Maine West, including the Project Lead the Way classes. So let me just give you an example of some of the things that Sandra does. Teaching assistant for CCD at St. Mary's. She's a member of the yearly retreat at St. Mary's. She does pumpkin decorating at Oakton Arms. Bingo at Lee Manor. Nicor Gas volunteer. Serves food at Bessie's Table. Does the cleanup of displays every year. She's assistant at our parent-teacher conferences. She's a West Fest volunteer, International Festival participant and volunteer, Warrior Pride mentor and leader, and she's fabulous at that. She's leading our youngest kids at Maine West. She's assistant at book sales, volunteer at our freshman mixer, volunteers at Meet the Teacher Night, at our carnivals, at our 8th grade orientation, at our 8th grade activities night, etc. She just does it all. If any teacher needs anything, Sandra's the first person on their list. She just gives of herself so freely. And what's neat about Sandra is when I asked Sandra, what are some of the things you've done because your Key Club sponsor nominated you for this award, she just kind of looked down and she says, well, I volunteered and gave me one thing. And she doesn't just do one thing. I had to keep pressing her for all these different things that she's done. So it's with great honor and pleasure that I recommend Sandra. My daughter is not a fan, but you are a model for everybody. I've kept your list handy for everybody who's working on their college applications, and yours is absolutely the perfect kind of resume to send off to colleges. So we're very proud of you, Sandra. And tell us what your plans are next year.
Yeah, this is my mom, my dad, and then my brother back here. And next year I'm going to be studying mechanical engineer, hopefully at U of I or Northwestern.
Wow. Very cool. Very cool. Nice job.
Sandra, I knew 2 weeks ago at the library that you were special. I just didn't know how special. She helped us with a project at the library. She walked in like a pro and took charge. Thank you so much.
So Ellen asked me tonight, he said, I want to give the West Award tonight. Thank you so much and congratulations. Good luck.
Good luck to you.
Congratulations. Okay, Kevin, Leslie, and Sandra. The gentleman by the door is David Beery. He's going to go out in the hall with you and your principals and take your pictures. And if your parents don't want to stay for the whole rest of the meeting, this is the opportune moment for you to leave since your students don't want to go study. But of course, it's an open meeting and everybody is welcome to stay. But if you leave, now's the time. Have a good night. And the rest of you can move up to the front seats if you wish too. So. Okay, we're going to start doing public comments. Anybody who wishes to address the board? Okay, updates from board members. Building and Grounds Committee report. Melvin?
Wait a minute.
Okay.
I have an update. November 15th is Board of Education Member Day. Well, it's a surprise. But in all honesty, in all seriousness, it is to acknowledge the tremendous work that our board members do. It's a general thing across the state, but specific to Maine Township, we have a wonderful board here, great board members. We do have items ordered, and if it were not for Hurricane Sandy, we would have them tonight. And that's all I'll say about that. Coming to a meeting near you. But on behalf of the cabinet that works with you every day, the students that you serve, the communities that you serve, thank you all very much for the service that you give to the students of District 207. It's duly noted, and a thankless job sometimes, but we couldn't have a better group of people doing it. Thank you.
Eldon,
Yes.
building grounds committees from October 1st and October 11th.
Yes, we had two meetings, and our purpose was to go over the report on, from ARCO on the, ARCON, on the 10-year plan for the improvement of our maintenance and improvement of facilities. And I'm going to turn it over to our most capable lady over here who will explain exactly what's the details are for this, basically this coming year that we need to vote on tonight. Mary, can you take over?
The 10-year facility plan study is presented this evening as information because it's a living, breathing document. It's going to change as our needs change and as our funding changes. So later in the board agenda, you'll see the year one, which will be summer of 2013 items that are going to go on. And that's what we've decided to do, is to keep it on our normal capital project cycle, where at this time every year we bring the one-year projects that we're going to do for the following year to the board to get approval for that. So we don't want to have the book approved in its totality because we don't want to give the impression that it's a done deal, that everything that's contained in this book is going to happen, because we know that we have probably additional needs that are going to come up over the next 10 years, as well as funding issues, challenges.
Yeah, it's a roadmap, and but a very good one,
Yes.
which I think that we follow as much as we can. With whatever happens along the way, we'll be in good shape.
Okay, thank you. Eldon, or Eric, we had a November 1st finance committee.
We did. We considered a couple of issues. Some time ago, the Finance Committee had supported a proposal from the administration to pursue capturing debts through a debt collection agency. That was ultimately pulled at the request of the administration in consultation with the Finance Committee. And in the meantime, they've come up with a better solution, which is utilizing an intergovernmental agreement with the Illinois Office of the Comptroller. I believe that's on the agenda for approval tonight, and comes with the support of the Finance Committee. To support that, there's a policy for first reading, 8212, state payment offset, that also has the support of the Finance Committee. We discussed some changes that have gone through the Insurance Committee. We recognize the great efforts by the Insurance Committee to make some good common sense changes. I've been able to witness those firsthand recently. I recently joined the Insurance Committee. I've just been to 2 meetings, I think, so far. So I know Ed and Margaret served on that for a long period of time. And I'd always heard at board meetings about the cooperation that could easily be witnessed there with our staff and our administration, and it's true. It's very impressive. Finally, the tax levy was considered, as has been the case, I think, for 1 or 2 years now, that I've been on the Finance Committee, for a couple of membership changes. We listened to the information, put it forward to the Board of Education without a recommendation either way. It's always a challenge balancing, I think, the committee and members' desires to try and control tax increases with the needs of the school district. Of particular concern is potential ramifications of legislation related to pensions and the impact that could have on our school district in the very near future. The thought is that there could be some significant extraordinary changes coming after the first of the year. And then in addition to that, we just heard from our Buildings and Grounds Committee, we have a lot of capital improvements that will be needed and costly in the next few years. And part of that is related to being able to provide to maintain our facilities properly. Is there anything, Mary? All right. We have no finance committee meetings scheduled for the rest of the month in November. The November 1st meeting was technically our October meeting, because it came before this board meeting. And we'll be meeting again December 5th. I think we'll check with you, Evan, if it works for you too.
Okay. Any other comments on the long-range facility study?
No, it's, I mean, I think I want to thank Mike, the buildings, the departments. It was a very comprehensive task over the last year with many people involved to develop the comprehensive roadmap that will shape what we do in our facilities over the next several years.
Okay, Barb, want to start with the AYP?
Sure.
Hank, while Barb's doing that, would you turn on the back screen?
Okay. Well,
Mary, do you have any update on monthly status finances? They had it subbed with the long-range facility. Did you have a summary?
In your packet
I'm sorry,
is
Barb.
the September financials. On the revenue side, again, because property taxes came in so early, your drafts are going to look a little skewed until December, which is when we got taxes last year. On the expenditure side, we're tracking fairly close to our historical trends. I want to point out, in the court fund, our workers' comp is already over budget, and it's only September, so that is not a very good sign. We had an unexpected large claim over the summer that caused us to immediately be over budget, but we're working on the other areas within the tort fund to try and see how we can mitigate some of those expenditures. With that, I'll take any questions on the September financials.
Your workers' comp is part of the scrim coverage?
It is part of the scrim coverage. We have $150,000 self-insured retention.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay, thank you, Mary. Okay, Barb, AYP.
All right. Well, I just want to let you know that there's not going to be a quiz after this presentation tonight. And all of this material was simply to get it into your hands. I'm going to give you a very brief Cliff Notes version this evening, because our intent is at the next 3 board meetings, hopefully to start the evening with an education committee meeting, where we have the opportunity prior to the board meeting to dig in a little bit more of the details of it. It also gives you an opportunity to hear from our 3 principals, hopefully 1 building per meeting, so that you can hear about the interventions and the work of their PLT that they're doing in response to some of this data. So while you have an awful lot of printed material in the board packet, actually tonight the presentation is going to be pretty short and just give you some big takeaway points. Give you another month to kind of read over and digest and think of some things that you might want to ask at the education committee meeting to front the December 5th board meeting. So, without further ado, you'll know from the last board meeting that tonight was to focus on what we knew about the graduating class of 2013, that cohort of students. And the data that you have in your board packet talks about the Prairie State Achievement Exam, which they took as juniors last spring in April. It gives us our school report card data, which is the adequate yearly progress based on that. And then my colleague who's here this evening, Don Marzloff, really is to be credited for a lot of the work here, has put together the value-added EPAS growth report and helped with all of the other reports as well. So I'm going to be deferring to him if he wants to chime in and remind you of anything that we haven't mentioned this evening. So very quickly, you know about the Prairie State exam, and we had 1,666 District 207 students complete both days of the Prairie State testing last spring. At all 3 buildings, the big takeaway is that class of student exceeded the Illinois percentage of students meeting and exceeding standards in all areas, reading, math, and science, but one area, main East, in reading. The Prairie State report through 2012 that you have in your packet shows the trends by performance, by building, by subgroup. In short, you know, the bar for AYP has been raised, although not as high as it could have been this year. They stayed the raising of it 1 year. But we still were asked for 85% of our students in each subgroup that's over 45 students to meet standards in reading and in math. And the only way that you can make AYP if you don't make it in that fashion is to do so through Safe Harbor, which I'm sure you're familiar with that concept. In short, did we make AYP? No, we did not. At the district level, no subgroup made AYP. And at Maine East and Maine South and Maine West, there were some groups that through Safe Harbor made AYP, as is indicated in your packet and on the slide. But we are in good company with most of the school districts, particularly the high school districts in the state of Illinois, in not making AYP, for all the reasons that we've talked about in the past. Looking at the EPAS Value Added report is a report that really is one that we put a little bit more stock into, because these are the students that we have who complete all 3 assessments. Explore in the fall of the 9th grade, Plan in the fall of 10th grade, and the Prairie State in the spring of 11th grade. We had 1,444 students complete all 3 assessments, and this report is focused just on those students. You can see the percentages for East, West, and South that represents. East's population, about 77% of those students made all 3 of those exams, 85% at West, and 89% at South. Now, I want to take you back, because in the past, the benchmark that we used to use, you'll remember on the EPAS report, was to look for a 5-point gain. 2 points between Explore and Plan, and 3 points between Plan and ACT. And past board discussions have really ranged around the topic of, is this a fair benchmark for us to continue using? Because it doesn't really give honor to the fact that our 3 buildings have different demographic profiles, different factors which affect that achievement level. So if we were to use this 5-point gain this year, some would have achieved it, as represented in the green. They would have made the 5-point gain, and some would not have achieved it. Just to remind you of the old way we had of calculating whether we met the district benchmark. As I said, it overlooks the fact that we have some demographic differences between the 3 buildings. And I put together 2 slides just to kind of give you a quick bird's eye view of how things have changed. 2005, you'll see, is the first yellow row here for our at-risk ethnicity percentage, that factor that's different between all 3 buildings. And then I skipped ahead and gave you the last 4 years here, and you can see how the growth in that factor has occurred and changed kind of the face of our 3 buildings. Second slide gives you a picture of the low income or at-risk ethnicity percentage. Now these 2 percentages Don has identified through his regression analysis work are the greatest ones for predicting the student achievement levels. And again, in this particular case, you see how the percentages have doubled, even more than doubled at West, or almost doubled at West, and the other buildings as well. There have been increases here. So it's not really been a good idea in the past, perhaps, to use the benchmark that ignored these factors. So what we're suggesting for you tonight to think about is to look at, and these are some of the documents that you have in front of you in color, put down a handout that perhaps might have been difficult for you to open on email, so I gave you a color copy this evening. This is a way of visually looking at what we know would be a predictive achievement level versus what actually has been observed. And I give you this slide of Maine West, for example. The line that's blue represents the observed, and the line that is red is predicted. And to the right in the table is the data for that. If you look through all of those charts, in every single case, does each school do better than predicted given the changing demographics? Yes. So I guess one question for you this evening and to think about in the next month is this a more realistic and a fairer way to establish a benchmark that reflects the particular factors that present challenges in each of our buildings to a different extent for their achievement levels? Don, do you want to add anything I might have added, or just
No,
by
I just
saying it?
want to point out that the predicted value comes from a model that we developed looking at the last 9 years worth of EPAS data. So we're looking at the building level variables here. So obviously, as our proportion of the at-risk population grows at each building, the predicted performance is going to go down. That's in line with ACT's own research. But what's interesting in nearly all of those charts is the actual performance has either stayed stable or risen in the face of that changing demographics.
So even as the particular profile of the building might have seen a tremendous increase in low-income students or particular at-risk factors, still the achievement has held steady or gone up. Again, the question that I'm going to leave you with this evening is to think about whether that is a better benchmark, and that particular link is really just to the packet that you have in front of you, but I did create a link where you can access those materials online if you'd like. So what our plan is for the next 3 to 4 months is to take some time and to look at more of the detail in your board packet, and to hear from each building principal and whatever team of individuals they might bring, to talk about what the particular interventions are, the particular work of the professional learning teams that they have operating, are producing, many of which are in response to some of this data as they're trying to address reading and math needs. And in particular, you're going to be interested in the coming months to hear about our STAR assessment data, which is looking at reading and math achievement. It's going to enable teachers to drill down much more to an individual student level and to groups of students as well. So that'll be another piece that we'll bring to the table beyond just talking about the high-stakes tests that are part of the EPAS package. Do you have any questions? Yes.
Could you explain a little bit to me the methodology of the regression analysis? And that's question number one. Number two, are there sort of objective or industry-wide standards for doing this? Is this something you kind of created, or is there a way to look at, we're not the only people with changing demographics, is my point. I mean, there must have been people studying it at U of I, the University of Wisconsin. It's kind of a, if we're going to adopt something new, I think we need to understand, I'm not looking for a whole math class, but a little bit about where the baseline comes from.
The methodology is fairly standard. It's based on, we're talking about a building level demographic here, so we're not predicting performance of individual students, but for the building. So we had for those last 9 years, so 27 different data points that looked at the relation between achievement and the a building characteristic. In most cases, I think it was either the at-risk ethnicity and low income combined, or just the at-risk ethnicity turned out to be the strongest predictor, which accounts roughly for 50% of the variance in that. Now, so that part is fairly standard, but we were faced with the challenge. We're looking at EPAS growth, and so we don't have data from other districts or other schools or even a national sample that looks at growth the way that we do. But that's kind of the year's worth of data that we had. There are other districts that use the EPAS system, but they test at different times. So the freshmen, the first time they administer the Explorer might be 8th grade, so that doesn't allow us to compare with them. So we just don't have that outside data. It's based all on our internal data over that 9-year history.
And another thing, Ed, this type of analysis, the person who used to do, in fact still does, Steve Corrigan from 214, we've given the board at different times over the years similar regression analysis that looked at predicted growth. One of the things that's interesting, and I think speaks to the quality of our instructional program, is that in those analysis that Steve was able to do, Maine has always been right at the very top against the high school districts in terms of some of the scattergrams you've seen in terms of the beating the expected growth.
one thing I was wondering, for example, I think that two of the regression analyses use both ethnicity and low income, and then the other two use ethnicity only. I had the impression that you took whichever of these various combinations resulted in the lowest projection.
Whatever was the most statistically significant, whichever predicted the most variance in student achievement.
So if you just put in simple English, like if you went back over the 9 years of data and you kind of measured ethnicity or picked, either one, and then saw how they did on this particular test, and you just kind of sort of ground all that data together and you said, it's certain ethnicity or certain low income populations, but it's all based on our district.
It's all based on our district. Yeah, and you just don't have the data. And what Steve Corrigan has done is, he's collected, because it's publicly available, he's looked at the, Prairie State ACT score and then pulled demographic data from the census data. So he kind of pulled all that. But those comparisons are based on just those group of that group.
So does our data match his data? In terms of predictive, and does he do regression analysis on the statewide data?
Yeah, he does regression analysis, but not on the growth.
Not on the EPAS,
data.
he's looking at the ACT.
He's only looking at
ones we've shown you
Why
before.
would it differ? I mean, it's,
Because we don't have that data.
Well, that's not what he's asking.
All I'm saying is that whether you're taking an ACT test or an EPAS test, if you're measuring the same factors, for example, ethnicity or low income or free lunch, whatever it is, you would think there'd be a consistency, wouldn't you?
And there is. If you go back to those scatter plots, and we can bring some back next month, if you look at those scatter plots, where we're positioned on the scatter plot for each building is indicative of, the line is predicted growth. We are north of the line, which means we've exceeded. So in terms of matching what you've just seen with what Corrigan's studies have shown, it does. It perfectly matches, in fact, that where we've been predicted in each of the buildings to have performance, we've actually exceeded that. And it's been actually pretty consistent when we look at it. It's just a much more precise way to analyze what we're doing as opposed to the arbitrary 5 that was just kind of pulled out of thin air without a lot of meaning for the particular buildings.
And I remember about 10 years ago reading a report by 2 University of Illinois professors who had looked at some of these same things. They discovered that 2 factors were most predictive of objective testing. And one of them was economic status, basically, low income. And the other I thought was mobility. I don't know if you're familiar with that study. And I think they concluded that mobility was probably a proxy for low income.
And what's interesting is, this is based on the EPAC value added data, so it only includes students who have been with us since freshman year. So it
took all
across the
tests.
board, it takes that mobility issue out of it.
Yeah, it takes it out of it.
But our mobility is reasonably low compared to.
And actually,
Depends
varies.
on
If
the
you
building.
one of the
I
slides
know
that
they
showed,
know, yeah.
the slide that showed like 77% of the East kids took all 3. It was 80-something for South and 80-something for West. That actually more or less is really a factor of mobility. That shows the difference in mobility between the buildings.
But comparatively speaking, isn't that reasonably a low mobility though, compared to other areas around?
I don't know. That's a good question. I mean, here's what I would predict. I would predict that where our buildings match other buildings similarly in demographics, that we will also relatively match in transients and mobility. That's what I would predict.
What is the district 214 guy's name?
Corrigan, Steve Corrigan. Yeah, he's Don's hero.
Yeah. One day.
Any other questions? Okay. Are we moving on to new course proposals?
Oh, okay. Isn't there a policy thing? Oh, new course proposals. All right.
I think you summarized it for us, but.
Okay. All right, so, new course proposals. You have, I've kind of subtitled in my mind this group of materials underneath course proposals in 3 adjectives. One is engagement. Maybe these aren't adjectives, these are some of them are. Engagement, rigor, and access. Now, the first two are name changes. You have a proposed name change for a course to pull it more in line with what's going to be clear, the computer course. But the department name change is one that I think brings it current with some of the career and tech ed federal changes and in alignment with some of our area high schools. Evanston has moved to calling this applied art and tech equivalent to career and technical education.
So which one of those three is that?
I would say access, because I think when you're clear, you're opening the door to those who are looking to have exposure to a curriculum that is, and it's also rigor too, that it's going to be a curriculum that's relevant, it's going to exceed maybe what sometimes the word applied kind of infers. The English senior semester electives, I would put into the category of engagement, because those are 3-semester electives that are being redesigned and offered to engage students who are seniors, who need some additional work in writing, who need a high interest opportunity, and those 3 particular electives I think are very different. The media piece, the sports piece, the nature and writing piece. And it's also addressing some of the individual needs that East in particular has identified for seniors in their last year. The geoconstruction course I am particularly excited about. We had an opportunity this summer, and I know Jill is here tonight. Yes. So pipe up if I forget something. We had an opportunity this summer to have a week-long training for teams of our math and construction trade teachers, not only from our district but from some area districts, to work with a duo of teachers from Colorado who, one was a geometry teacher, math teacher, and one was a building trades construction teacher, who had decided that teaching these disciplines separately didn't make sense. That if you took geometry, ripped out the chapters of the book and reorganized it and thought about building a house, you could accomplish with rigor and application a much better product and engage students at a higher level.
So it's a practical application of something every kid says, I'll never need again. It's
Right,
sophomore year.
right. So this summer, these teachers actually built some things, and I was out there one morning watching them, the geometry teacher from East and our building trades guy, try to lay out an 8 by 11 foot rectangular plat facing a certain direction so the view would be good supposedly of this house. And you would think it would be a very easy thing to do, to make sure the corners are square. They had a piece of string, a piece of chalk, and a tape measure. That was it. It took at least an hour, and probably the person who had the most practical advice was, of course, the building trades person. But they both learned things from each other. But it was interesting because they got into intersecting arcs and midpoints and things that are not in my bailiwick. But they were both engaged, and it was fascinating. And I don't know if you want to speak to some of the other projects they had that week.
I wasn't a part of it, but they thought it was the best professional development they'd ever been to by far.
Jill was our math chair from East.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so this training delivered to us a curriculum. Care to use it? I mean, that was part of the package deal, and the funding for this training was through NSER, which is our consortium for our career and tech ed dollars. So what it led to, though, was the energy of some of our East teachers who decided that they wanted to put together a new course proposal called Geometry and Construction. And, you know, ultimately, maybe we'll build a house someday, but we are working with Mary, and we even had a chat with the gentleman from Kirkridge, the building inspector, and Tom Kaiser is kind of the the horse behind
He's
you.
actually meeting with the two gentlemen from Colorado are in town this evening, and he's having dinner with them.
Okay, and so we might start with sheds, or children's playhouses, or something more manageable while we figure out some of the finer points about how you finance this, building codes, how you move it, how you plant it, et cetera. But we're very excited about this particular opportunity. It is not, as you might imagine, for lower level math students. This is a rigorous curriculum. In fact, Jill, you were one of the first ones to go online and
Absolutely,
look
I was
at it.
skeptical when I saw their first presentation and thought, ooh, what is the geometry really in this? But they make their curriculum very available, and it is truly matches our rigorous geometry courses that we offer now. It's in a very different order than what we teach, because it's aligned to go with building the house, but it's all there, and they have it aligned to Common Core too. I was just at the presentation this morning, and they've aligned it to all the geometry Common Core standards.
But Jill, in terms of the student distribution, this could be anything from a student who presumably could go to Oakton or Triton or a building
Absolutely.
science associate to a student going to U of I for
Absolutely,
engineering.
it could be for anybody who's interested.
So the proposal, as we have worked it out with them, is not going to ask for extra FTEs. Any extra FTE would be absorbed by the particular courses that would have to be readjusted. And we know that we have to figure out some of the financing, but I think because we're going to start small, that probably it's manageable. So I guess with great excitement, we bring this to you as a possible course proposal. I'll also clue you in that the other two buildings are very interested in it or the idea, and this dynamic team from Colorado have worked out a marriage between algebra and automotives. I'm out of my bailiwick when I talk about this, but I guess the gears in cars have some kind of algebraic ratio. That's one clue to understanding where they went with this, but at any rate.
Greg and I can tell you what to do with it, but we want to sell you the parts first.
Yeah. I need to make a little side business.
But actually, Ed and I were having a conversation this weekend, similarly related. You know, this area is actually a large manufacturing area. We have the Tool and Manufacturing Association right next door. One of the things I think we need to pay careful attention to moving forward is trying to really, create these career pathways. I like the language change for that reason, where we're really linking students up with a job that is saleable and they're out there. We're importing welders in this country, for example, and some of the MIG welders that are working around the lake are making six figures because they're hard to find, and there are jobs like that we need to pay a little bit more attention to.
Barb, question. It's my understanding that over the years, 214 has built houses.
Yes.
How does this differ from their project? Is it the combination of the math and the building trades together?
My understanding, yes, that was strictly a building trades course, and they built a house at multiple high schools, I think,
Right.
at the time. I know when I was in 214, that's what they did.
I don't know if they're still doing it or not. It might be
I don't know, to be
difficult
honest.
to do today, but
And they took kids to a site to build where this would be built on our
on property, on site, yeah.
And they also have the parcels of land, I believe, that they have had. where
That
it's,
is, yes.
and that's quite expensive now, required, so.
I doubt if they're
Yeah.
still doing it.
Yeah.
So that's the difference. We're
This is a
incorporating.
marriage of the two disciplinaries. Now, on the transcript, it would still appear as geometry and whatever the exact description is of the building trades course. We would just have a double block. We would have a group of kids together for a double period and the two teachers there.
But would this be in lieu of a geometry class?
Yes, it would count for
So
the
they
math
would-
credit,
And they're also going to get an applied
and
arts
they're applied,
credit.
yes, or their career
Career and
and
technical now.
credit.
So they'll have 2 credits.
2 credits, so
So
there's
two
no loss.
birds with one stone, but
Yes.
it's another math class.
But it's taking 2 periods to do it.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's really, they're putting in the same amount of time. They're gonna get the same level of instruction,
Right.
except it's
But
gonna
it's
mean
integrated.
something.
You're going to
It's gonna
integrate
be-
math
Yeah.
I
with
bet they remember it.
Yeah, I don't know how many times I've heard, how am I ever gonna use it, more with algebra perhaps than with geometry, but how am I ever gonna use this again? And this is a good example of how.
It beats taking them out and teaching them how to play pool. Okay, any other questions for Barb on instructional services?
There's a couple other courses, did you?
Sure, go ahead.
The science research program course, that is for summer school only. And I would put that under the category of enrichment. And I need to just tell you a brief little story. You may have heard the MacArthur Foundation prizes came out recently. And one of them went to a young lady named Melody Schwartz, who was a student of mine a million years ago. She now lives in Switzerland and is working on cancer research for lymphatic systems. It's pretty exciting. But when she was a student at Glenbard West, when I was there, I wasn't her science teacher, obviously, which was my major, but she was in a program like this. And this is a program, this is an enrichment program. So often we talk about summer school and we're talking about remedial opportunities. This is really an opportunity for a different kind of a student to do some kind of research that begins in the summer, to connect with teachers and mentors, and carries through the school year doing some work, and also the encouragement is there for those students to perhaps enter into some contests and to some other challenges to promote their inquiry and their work. So I am fascinated by this idea. I'd love to support it. I think what we're looking for, though, is to pass the concept, knowing, and I said this to the folks who brought this forward, that we have to look into how we're going to fund it, because the particular price tag they have on for what they feel is necessary is one that, right now, we don't have a way of funding that. But I'd like to get the idea in front of you conceptually and see how you feel about offering an enrichment course as a summer school course. And then, if you're okay with that, let us go to work on trying to set some of the funding issues. Whether we can do that through some grants, or maybe some partnerships with some area labs, or whatever. I think there's some avenues to pursue, and I would love to work on that, but I would just like to get the idea in front of you on that.
Well, we have a question regarding after the summer's over, because I noticed it's open to students want free school.
Yeah.
But it's going to be housed at South. Is that concept?
You know what, it was an idea that came from a South team, but we wanted to open the door to students from the other two buildings, so I guess we have to look at numbers and see,
Well, I guess my question is this.
how we would handle that. I'm not
If it's
sure.
going to be a continuation so they can continue their research through the school year, that may be create some difficulties.
Unless perhaps one of their mentor teachers was a teacher that was assigned from one of the other buildings. Those are some questions we have to work out. Any other thoughts on that one?
I did write down some notes that I thought, for 15 students was a bit expensive. Although,
I know.
great idea.
Yeah.
I mean, the cost initially on the first year, if you offset the summer school tuition, would probably be about $1,000 a student,
Yeah.
which is, I
You
think,
couldn't do
we
it.
just can't do that
No,
at this
no.
point in time. Although I think, it would be a great program for the students that we have who have these interests on, my daughter'd like to sign up today.
Yeah.
Well, and we have had a number of research opportunities that the board has heard about for students in all three of our buildings. Now, what's interesting about those is those have often come through grant opportunities, so this would be the type of a class where if the board was supportive of the concept, we could potentially go out and look at finding some partners maybe that would help underwrite it.
Yeah, we have to find some
Yeah.
partners or something we can.
So I would say, if you're gonna approve it pending our being able to find some budget support for this. And science chair itself knows that. But I didn't want that to get in the way at this point. I just wanted to see how you felt about the concept of this kind of course in the summer, and then let us go to work and see if we can find the funding for it.
Before I came to Maine, I was in Albuquerque, and science fair was big in Albuquerque. And I had students very much involved in science fairs. And it's kind of hard to measure what they learned from that experience, but it's invaluable. It really is something that our kids here really haven't had that experience with. I think it's a great opportunity.
In some ways, it's not that different from geo and construction. It's just a different audience and a different discipline. It's-
And they can pick their
Yeah,
own individual research, I'm assuming.
right,
You might have 15 different projects.
right. So it has some challenges for us to solve, but, you know, I think we want to be a district that is cutting edge in all areas. And we have to, I think, especially remind ourselves that summer is an opportunity for gifted students as well, not always just looking at their remedial course offerings. So with that in mind, I give that to you as something to think about.
So if I just understand, we would do it this summer, but only if there's funding, is that what you're saying?
Right,
So you're gonna come back to us with it?
I can, yes, I mean, if you prove it in concept, then I will start working on answering some of your other questions.
Have you explored at all the possibilities of
Just very informally.
You think there is a good possibility?
I can't say one way or the other right now. But I can give you some updates as I come across them.
It sounds to me like it's a great opportunity for those students who really are eager to pursue science.
I've got a go-getter assistant too, that I can put on this. He's a former Maine West grad who would take it as a personal challenge to find the funding. So, put him to work too.
And how much money would you need to bring this course with us around, because they have to range normal summer school courses? My understanding was summer school tuition kind of paid for itself, maybe that's changed a little bit in the last couple of years.
Well, their price tag is what, what's the bottom line?
22,800.
Yeah, I think, at least half, if not 2/3 of it, we have to find. We could pay for the summer curriculum development. So that's, I think, was
So that would
4,800.
be this summer, but then the actual
Right.
program would be the 2014, was it or something?
No, details escaping me right now. Did it say that? I was thinking it was going to be offered this summer, but maybe it's being built this summer.
It says 3 weeks in summer school plus an throughout the year. And it does say.
No, I think it's to run this summer. They're going to start writing a curriculum as soon as I give them the go-ahead and get the money organized, et cetera.
The
So
curriculum is
second
a bit fluid
semester.
because it'll be based upon what the student interest is. So it'll be a very rough curriculum, but it'll be more of a research based that can facilitate that piece of it. So I think the
Scientific
curriculum
research
piece of it will
skills
move
piece,
pretty
yeah.
quickly.
Yeah. And then the last two courses there, again, I think the Latin American history course, the semester elective for history, would be a terrific opportunity for a lot of our students. I think that would be a very personal area to investigate. And it, you know, there are other semester electives out there in social science, but this would be the first one in history. So it's kind of a combination of historical research skills with a very current focus and engaging focus for our Latino students and others interested in that particular area. We give them a half credit semester lecture. And digital imaging, simply an opportunity presenting a third year for interested students who've had the courses that lead up to this, and this would probably be one of those combo classes, so it's not really going to be extra FTE, it would be taught in conjunction with advanced digital imaging, etc. So that's the lineup. Any further questions? Any questions?
Mary, if they're gonna come up with half the money for this 22.8, isn't there enough money in Fund 1 to turn around and commit that we would do this?
If they can come up with half the, I mean, I think the piece that we talked most about was the after-school stipends. That's the unique component to that. So that's where they would have to target the grants for funding for that.
So my only question is why would we really need them to bring it back to us for $11,000?
That's what I was asking.
So if we give the green light on this tonight, which I don't hear any objection, then I think you should find the money and go for it this year.
So if I can find half the money, it's a go. Is that what you're saying?
No objection to the board? There you go. Okay, anything else on your new courses? Do you have a form language item there? You excited, Sean?
I am.
Okay. Anything else? Barb, anything else?
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Ken, update on monthly FOIA requests.
One request processed this month.
Okay, number 6, first reading of Board of Education policies and procedures. 8212 state payment offset. No need for any action on the part of the board. Number 7, textbooks, first reading. Information on additional textbooks are being recommended for adoption by the Board of Education for the 2012-2013 school year is included for review. Textbook adoption recommendations made at the regular December board meeting. Textbook summary being made available in all local libraries. Is this all of the books that you have here?
Yes, they're on the side.
So if anybody from the public wishes to look at the textbooks during the break, come up here, you're welcome to look at the books that are here. Any other items before we move to the consent agenda? Is there any request to pull anything off the consent agenda? Okay.
Move we accept the consent agenda as presented. Second.
Okay, that would be Burke and Lays, we're motioning 8, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and H. Any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, call the roll.
McGrath. Aye. Burke.
Yes.
Miller.
Aye.
Lays.
Aye.
Heller. Sullivan.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Number 9, summer school calendar. Recommendation, Board of Education approve the calendar for summer school 2013 as presented. Motion please.
So moved.
Lays, second. Burke. Questions or comments on the motion?
Are there any changes here in terms of the
Last summer was the first summer for a new schedule, and this mimics that, is my understanding.
Yes, it does. 4-day weeks.
Longer days, 4-day summer school.
And you found that successful or better successful
We
than?
had
Plus
praise
attendance
on the
problems.
schedule. No, the attendance problems were down
Right.
and compliments from parents and kids. That week off in between homes would cover the July.
Now, do we still have the same week off this, same type of, okay, yeah.
Yes, printed in the times listed there.
Yeah, I forgot about that. A little bit more family friendly.
Any other questions? Hearing none, call the roll.
Heller. Burke.
Yes.
McGrath. Aye. Lays.
Aye.
Miller.
Aye.
Sullivan.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Number 10, 2012 tax levy. The recommendation is that the Board of Education establish an estimated levy amount of $109,114,205, which represents a 4.19% increase over the prior year's extension. While a public hearing is not necessary, as the Board of Education has not levied more than 5%. The 207 is to fill in the requirements to inform the community in the 2012 tax levy by holding a public hearing on December 3rd, 2012 at 7 p.m. here in the board. Motion, please.
Move we accept the recommendation.
Burke, second.
Second.
McGrath. Questions or comments on the motion?
I'd like to explain why I'm going to vote no. I'm going to be surprised I voted. I've been consistently no for any tax increase for about 2 years, maybe a little longer. So I just don't think it's justified that things are so tough. I just think that, and this is higher. This is the highest levy I've seen in the years that I've been voting now. It's usually about 2.8 or 4% or something. It's just higher than what we approved the last couple of years. So to me, it's going in the wrong direction. But I'd like the record to show that I voted against it because I'm not in favor of any tax increase.
Any other comments?
I'd like to make a comment as to why I think it's what we should do. There's so much uncertainty from the state at this point in terms of certain expenses that can be pushed back to us, which not maybe, but probably will be pushed back to us in terms of retirement expenses, et cetera. I think it would be foolish not to do this at this time.
And this is simply the estimated levy, the actual tax levy we voted on at the December meeting.
That is correct.
Okay. Any other comments?
I would just comment that I referenced some comments earlier. You heard from the other 2 Finance Committee members, Ed and Eldon. As I've said, there is no recommendation from the Finance Committee as it pertains to this. I strongly share Member Miller's opinion that we need to hold taxes down. However, of great concern to me is pending legislation right now trying to change a state obligation to a local school district obligation. And once that matter is settled, hopefully with some finality, we know one way or the other, I would look forward, should I remain on the board, to trying to join Ed in holding that down, because I think it's very important to try and minimize tax burden to our community. But we have some significant concerns with things in the coming years. We're going to need to spend quite a bit of money on our facilities, and we're going to potentially need to spend quite a bit of money paying for a state obligation. So I will be reluctantly voting yes for the tax levy extension.
Any other comments?
One other thing, just a reminder, it's a small piece of this, but this also includes capturing the new levy for the casino. So it's kind of a do it now or you lose that opportunity to.
And if you look at the levy, you can see the vast majority, where we've shifted everything is in O&M to help fund the capital plan. The other funds we've kept at very modest increases, but we're trying to build the capacity to, without anything outside the tax cap, be able to fund our capital plan.
And for the record, I would agree 100% with Mr. Lays that I think the potential shifting from Springfield to the local taxpayer districts is the most dangerous item we have on the horizon as addressed as all school districts, whether that be community colleges, high schools, or grade schools.
My concern is that if we don't plan for that, we will then have to cut certain areas which could be done for the education program.
And definitely student service areas. Our largest single expense is salaries, and that's where you have to see this stuff take place. That's what's scary. Any other comments?
I'd just like to make sure that the record does reflect that Member Sullivan and I occasionally agree.
with the emphasis on occasionally. I was proud of you for not falling out of your chair when I said that. Okay, any other questions or comments? Call the roll.
Lees.
Aye.
McGrath. Aye. Burke.
Yes.
Heller. Miller.
No.
Sullivan.
Aye. Motion carries. Next item, 11, capital plan. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve 2013-2014 facility plan is recommended by the Buildings and Grounds Committee. Details are found in the appendices. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Burke, second.
Second.
McGrath. Questions or comments on the motion?
A couple quick ones.
Sir.
Mary, if we were to take, consistent reporting year to year, how much have we been spending? To me, I commented at the first building and grounds committee meeting, it seemed like some of these items were combination side and some were real capital improvement projects. But is there an accounting that treats these so that you can say that this is twice what we did last year, or twice what the average over the last 5 years, or three times?
It's about $3 million. So our benchmark was trying to figure out how to fund about $5 million when we're funding about $2 million currently.
So 2 would be the current number, apples to apples, things that we're doing, counting these things versus things
Yes.
we've done. And then you mentioned this a second ago, funding. Is the plan then for these capital improvements to fund it out of current incomes, or is there a powering plan anywhere?
We have no, certainly when our existing debt service extension rolls off many, many years from now and our current bonds are paid off, we would look to capture some of that, I would think, to fund this plan, because at $5 million a year, we can't fund this plan.
Is that what it is? I know it was at the first meeting when we had to figure out.
Yeah,
What does this say, about $5 million a year?
It's more than $5 million a year. $5 million is if I squeeze and squeeze and squeeze, I can figure out how to get $5 million. But the plan is over $72 million over 10 years, which puts it at over $7 million. So
But one of those years is.
one of those years, next year's a heavy year.
Does that 72 million, does that include that asbestos abatement that is, that's not the...
Life safety.
Correct. Doesn't include asbestos, doesn't include the column that we have requested but no funds available, which is another about 22 million.
So there's that bottom line is that voluntary asbestos
Things like,
abatement,
like
we are
the
not, it's not included in the study.
Yeah, that are not on the
The
budget.
unfunded requests.
Also, one time, I thought, didn't you, I thought this, you know, as much as this is, I thought I heard a number that was way higher on your list.
Well, that was-
Hundreds of millions of dollars over the 10 years.
I think it was, we were talking 200 million over a 20-year period, which is close to 10 million a year, which is ultimately over that length of time when we turn around and look at infrastructures. That was my personal opinion as to what we were looking at. And I still think, considering you're sitting here at 7.2 and you haven't even hit any of the wish list items, I don't think my prediction is going to be off by the time you get to 10 years. Because you're going to have infrastructure items that are going to collapse and require development. You know, we know that we've got an issue with the Main South Pool that's been there for a while, and, you know, when you turn around and address something like that, we're talking millions of dollars to turn around and address those items.
Yeah, the Main South Pool currently is in the development plan. as it
Correct.
exists right now.
It's not even in the requested, no funds available.
And so when we look at those infrastructure items that are in need of substantial addressing, yeah, I think the 7.2 is a scratch here, and this is Mary pulling stuff together to make this happen.
It's only 2 million along there for 200.
Correct. But my 200 million was a 20-year projection.
But what it is, I think, fundamentally is the difference between, and what this plan really, this is pretty much looking at a 1929, 1957, 1964 building, and knowing that you've got some systems that are on year 50 that were predicted to have a lifespan of 25.
That were not replaced or repaired.
That were not replaced or repaired, just
I mean, I think
maintained.
it's a good time to talk about funding these things, because Mary just said seconds ago, we can't really pay for this out of, you know, our budget and revenues. I think it's fair to say, what is the plan? Because next year is going to be, we're going to borrow the money or not? We're not gonna borrow it.
We don't have the capacity to borrow for next year, so next year it'll either be spend a bunch of fund balance or reprioritize and shuffle. I mean, those, in my opinion, are our two options short term.
And long-term, you know, you've got to turn around and have the future boards evaluate the present sense situation that the district finds itself in. I mean, we don't know whether or not there'll be 3 schools in 10, 15, 20 years, you know, whether there could be 4, or we could turn around and move to different facilities. I mean, there's a whole myriad of options that this board is not considering. I'm just saying that from my experience, when you turn around and look at this 50-year-old infrastructure, that 50-year-old infrastructure costs money to maintain. Any other questions or comments? We have a motion and a second. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, call the roll.
Lees,
Aye.
Heller, Burke,
Yes.
Miller, McGrath, Sullivan.
Aye. Next item 12, insurance renewal. Recommendation, the Board of Education approve the health insurance rates for calendar year 2013 as presented. So motion Lays, second. Heller. Questions or comments on the motion?
I have a question.
Yes.
There's a proposal here about using the ERRP, the Early Retirement Reimbursement Program funds for one particular plan offsetting the HMO increases caused by that's been wonderful results for the current year. And I wonder whether we have an opinion from the legal sources of that being applicable, because my understanding is that they have said, and I've pulled the FAQs for IRBA, that if we are using it to reduce plan participants' premiums, contributions, co-pays, etc., that we would use that for, we must do so for all plan participants. They were talking about the question between early retirees or plan participants. Do we know whether just targeting this one small segment of plan participants is allowed under the?
We have not had forensic, I'm happy to do so,
I think
and we
we
have
should.
not used all of the IRFA money for, I mean, we're using a big chunk of it.
I don't know
But
where,
I
I
will
don't
ask.
know where, I want to confirm that what we're doing, and is any of that money going to the early retirees?
Yes,
And how-
because there are participants in the HMO that are early retirees.
Can we check, because I don't know.
I will absolutely check.
It's not in the statute specifically, but it is, and it's not in the regs blatantly, but you can have my highlighted paragraph there where they talk about all participants, and since that population is a fairly small segment, relatively speaking, of our insurance population, I don't know that we are meeting the requirements for using that, and I sure hate to have that come back in place.
And only because we have Flex 125 issues in the beginning of the calendar year, we need to pass this tonight. If there's any revision based upon Margaret's request, you'll bring that back in December?
Correct. Well, and actually, probably what we would do is, we know from our collective bargaining agreement says that the HMO premium cannot change for January 1st. So the premium will stay, it'll just be that we spend down the fund balance in the health insurance fund if we cannot use these ARPA dollars.
And you'll check, also you'll check on its use for the other use for the.
Yep, we'll check on, we'll hand them our application and what we plan to do, and let them decide if we can do what we want to do.
Any other questions? Hearing none, call the roll.
Miller,
Aye, subject to legality.
McGrath,
Aye, also subject to.
I think we can concede that all aye votes will be subject. On all, let's, yeah, make. Okay, so we have McGrath, second.
we have McGrath and Miller so far, aye?
Yes.
Okay. Lays,
Same restriction.
Heller,
Yes.
Burke,
Yes.
and Sullivan, all
Aye,
subject to legality.
all subject to legality.
We get a report
Of
back.
the
on
CRPA.
Yeah, well, I'll put it in Friday notes, it'll probably this Friday, I would
Okay.
guess it'd be.
Yeah, we can do next time, sure.
Thank you.
Getting an answer on anything on that program is kind of a challenge, though.
Number 13, intergovernmental agreement with the Illinois Office of the Controller. The Board of Education entered an intergovernmental agreement with the Office of the Controller for access to the Controller's local debt recovery program to aid in the collection of past due school fees. Is there a motion, please? Blaze, second Heller. Questions or comments on the motion?
13,000.
No, I'm sorry.
The 100,000 is owed to us, there is zero cost to participate in this program.
All right, so 100 grand is what it is.
Right, and.
Well, and we could probably chase more because that's 100 grand currently. We're gonna look to go back, we can go back 7 years if we've got the records.
And where would you say the 100 grand is broken down? Is it ID badges, is it?
It's everything. A lot of it is time pays, lost books that aren't paid for, you know, athletic equipment that a student chooses not to return.
Any other questions or comments?
My initial concern was that there be proper notification of families. It looks to me like it's covered at least 3 times.
Well, the state, we've done this, and the state is pretty specific as to how they're going to turn around and notify them, give them their opportunity to appeal.
But we've already notified.
We've already billed, yeah.
At least twice. So it's be hard for them to say. I didn't
School
know.
notifies, I notify, state notifies.
The school usually notifies multiple times. That could be half a dozen times just in school.
In the old days, the only way we could deal with that was to hold cap and gowns, which.
Isn't it?
Subject to legality.
Subject to legality.
I'm just saying, in the old days, that's.
Quite frankly, I think this is a little stronger than holding.
I think it is. Besides that, if they do it as a freshman, it's a long time before you get your money.
Actually, just for grins and giggles, I think the first person will turn in is the state of Illinois for the Oh, the irony.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, call the roll.
Lays,
Aye.
Burke,
Yes.
Heller, Miller, McGrath, Sullivan.
Aye. Next item is the waiver of the administrative cost cap, which we have to take a meeting on. That the Board of Education applies for a waiver modification of state board rules and/or school code mandates for exceeding the administrative cost cap, the 2012-2013 due to the dissolution of NetSec. Motion, please. Heller, second.
Second.
Burke. Questions or comments? Hearing none, call the roll.
Lays,
Aye.
Miller, Burke, McGrath. Aye. Heller. Sullivan.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, this is probably one of high controversy, number 15. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the establishment of the ukulele club at Maine West High School as outlined in the appendices. Motion, please. Heller, second. I was gonna say, it's Maine West, but then sorry, Audrey, it died for lack of a second. Second. Heller and Burke, questions or comments on ukuleles?
It's awesome, we have about 25 kids showing up every week playing their ukuleles.
Without a formal club, it's just a random showing of ukuleles.
Yes.
Big
Okay.
Don Ho fan.
And a couple kids perform at the beach show, they were great.
Okay, any questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Miller.
Aye.
Heller.
Yes.
Lees.
Aye.
McGrath.
Aye.
Burke.
Yes.
And Sullivan.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Okay, number 16, school board member election, April 9, 2013. Recommendation, the Board of Education authorize Secretary of the Board of Education to publish a legal notice relating to the nominating positions for membership of the Board of Education, Maine Township, High School District 207, which we accepted by the Secretary of the Board of Education from Monday, December 17, 2012 through Monday, December 24th, December spelled wrong, December 24th, 2012, between the hours of 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. On Monday, December 24th, 2012, the office will remain open until 5 p.m. as required by law. The office will not be open on Saturdays and Sundays. 4 4-year terms and 1 2-year vacancy will be filled as a result of the selection terms of office for Eldon Burke, Eric Blaze, Margaret McGrath, and Ed Miller will be expired, and the 2-year vacancy is due to the resignation of Joanne Graham. School district office will be open the following dates for filing withdrawals or objections. December 26th, December 27th, December 28th, December 31st, 2012, and January 2nd, 2013. Is there a motion, please?
So moved. Just three.
Just to 8 right now. Burke, Keller, questions or comments?
Yeah, I note that included in this description is the 2-year vacancy due to the resignation of Joanne Graham. Did she resign in writing, or?
She resigned in writing effective the 31st.
And is that resignation made properly to the board?
Doesn't have to be to the board, she just has to notify us. Just
That
says,
she's
you know,
resigned her
I
position.
forwarded this on.
Closed on her house.
Okay.
And therefore is no longer a resident of the district.
31st of what?
October.
I haven't seen it.
October.
I was just surprised we didn't receive anything.
She just sent me an email direct. She didn't send a letter or anything like that. That's all she has to do legally. She didn't have to send a,
And it's not to come to the board, it just goes to the superintendent. And the
Well-
superintendent informs the board.
yes, I.
Because we had a different experience last time, where we had a resignation.
Okay, well, there's nothing in the code that requires, like a legal formal notice or anything like that. She can just inform us, and that's all she's required to do.
And he forwarded to me. But we'll forward to all the board members, but we've posted information about the position as well as this posting. Any other questions? Okay.
Great planning. The district office open until 5 p.m. on the 24th. Was that you, was that
Well,
state law?
that was a
Yes.
state.
State law.
What happened was is they moved it due to a holiday in the spring that they were trying to avoid, and nobody counted backwards the number of days to see where it fell. And they did this. And there's a lot of local government entities that are complaining about this.
Oh, it's crazy.
Okay.
Hopefully Santa will.
There's a motion, just second. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, call the roll.
McGrath.
Aye.
Burke.
Yes.
Miller.
Aye.
Heller. Lees.
Aye.
Sullivan.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Next item is designated representatives of the Board of Education appoint Ken Wallace, Mary Cooler, Greg Dietz, Barbara Varga, and Dave Beery as designated representatives of the Board Secretary. We'll also receive nominating papers and withdrawals or objections in the Board Secretary's absence. So motion, please. Blaze, Heller. Questions or comments on the
I
motion?
would have amended to read the way you actually read it, which is also, because when I first read this, it looked to me like Jimmy was not authorized. And when you read it, John, you said the word also, but it's actually,
Okay.
it's not my motion, so.
So amended.
You have a second?
Well, they motioned what I verbally stated, so. Any other questions or comments? Hearing none, call the roll.
Lees,
Aye.
Burke,
Yes.
Heller, Miller, McGrath, Sullivan.
Aye, motion carries unanimously. Questions or comments on the calendar items?
We have one possible addition, which is a very suggested policy committee meeting. Margaret, you and I are currently sitting members of the policy. Joanne was on, I don't know the Trump plans on appointment, we just overall. But what it has to do with social media, and you were at a seminar recently.
Yeah, well, so you can take a look at our social media policy, what that language that's incorporated into our acceptable use policy, specifically to cyberbullying, all those types of things.
So what I was thinking was, we haven't had a single policy committee meeting since, the new committee appointments. I was thinking we might get together, even in Joanne's absence, and someday do sometime after Thanksgiving, not the first week after, but the first week of December.
Okay, I'll have to check. Wednesday would probably work well if I don't have class that night, but my calendar says I do, and I just am not sure if I have.
That's like the
5th of December.
4th of December, something like that.
5th is a Wednesday, but I think the prior class.
Fifth is 8 a.m.
But you might be able to do, depending on your class, you might be able to do 4 p.m. time, for example.
Yeah, but I have class 4 o'clock.
Okay.
We're fine.
Since we have a December 3rd meeting, you can also announce it at December 3rd meeting.
I hadn't thought of that, but I'd just like to get it scheduled because I would like to know. Let me know.
Send me an email and just let me know if I don't get you on.
But if you announce it December 3rd, it's not already called.
Correct, it would have to be called, before that, and it won't be.
Yeah, Margaret doesn't have a problem. We'll put it on the agenda, basically to cover grades. Any other, Margaret, I'd like to discuss any other policies that might be on our agenda for the coming year, for the current year positions.
We also had a head committee meeting, Eldon, the right before the board meeting on the 3rd. I will be on the 10th. Okay,
Great.
on the first.
Include me in this, I'm not gonna put on the calendar, I'll actually say,
Guess we could do it Christmas.
So what
Eve.
time, what time are you having the other committee meeting?
Well, I was thinking 5:30. We'll have several of these, I think, but, to get started on looking at some of the data.
Wait a minute, hold on, who's on the education committee?
Or do you want me to try for another date since Donna can't be there?
Okay, so if Joanne's no longer there and Donna's out of town, it might make sense to start the following month rather than just have
We
one of
could do
the,
that.
one committee.
Well, one of
member
the
there.
things too, Eric, we were hoping is maybe to get more of the board members there too,
That's what I
not
was,
just the education
I
committee.
thought it was kind of the whole meeting.
Yeah, that's what I kind of pushed for, is trying to.
Well, I just don't think you should call it as an education.
Well, that, we can do a committee home, that's fine, that would work.
Unless Donna would like to be there for the meeting. then you might
She's
wanna-
gonna be
I
out
will
of
be
town.
on time.
But I'm saying we could hold off another month.
I don't care. It's up to the pleasure of the board.
Why don't we schedule it for right now, because all the, every member of the board is a member of the public, and all the public members are invited to come. And so therefore, I think it would be a fruitful discussion if we decide before that they're not going, we think we cancel the meeting.
So is it gonna be called as a committee of the whole?
It can be called as an education committee meeting.
You will know who.
Well, it
Seems
seems
a
a
little proper.
find out who's going to be, I'll be there next night.
Okay. Eldon, Education Committee as a committee of the whole? Okay.
Do we really need an hour and a half on guard, or at 6 o'clock, or just?
6 o'clock is fine.
I'll let know just up, that it just seems to be an hour and a half, followed by a 2.5, 3 hour board. I just changed my time here on my phone. Seems like a little bit much.
Okay, any other comments on the calendar? So we'll find out about that December 5th soon, so we can get it on here.
I have a question. There was a discussion about interviews.
Yes.
I've seen it on the calendar here with you.
Yes, it's November 25th. Sorry, I thought I communicated that in an email, but I'll send that.
Has that
back out.
meeting been called already?
No, it has not.
When's that gonna happen?
We have a deadline to receive resumes through the 12th.
I understand, just curious when you're gonna.
I figured that
call
would
the
after
meeting.
After the 12th, I can receive.
Sometime between,
Replies.
yeah.
So we have an idea about when.
After the, yeah, Sunday.
Starting after.
Is it 4 o'clock?
Yes. Yeah, after that's our meeting.
Unless, of course, the Bears game moves, and I'm sure we'll motion to make a meeting. Okay, any other items on the calendar? Okay, any other communications that come before the board? Okay, hearing none. We have a motion to go into closed session for the purpose of student personnel, review of closed session minutes, appointment, compensation, performance, discipline, or dismissal of specific employees, probable or imminent or pending litigation. Mr. Deeds, anything on collective negotiations or setting a price for sale of property, Mary? Anybody else? Okay, so A, B, C, D. Motion is Peller, second is Burke. Questions or comments on the motion? Hearing none, call the roll.
Heller? Miller? McGrath? Lees?
Aye.
Burke?
Yes.
Sullivan?
Aye, motion carries unanimously. And we are in closed session